I've never taken one down. I don't know how to do it.
You just go with 2 people. It takes 2 people. Oh, fuck! Oh, fuck! Holy shit. He's behind it. He's behind it. He's behind it. I think that's enough grenades.
That was scary.
Holy shit. Check out my website at karmakut.com to see system specs, donation links, and latest uploads all in one place. You can also get cool rewards like Karmakut patches and key tags on my Patreon. And don't forget to hit that subscribe and bell button for future uploads. Hello everyone, today's video is going to be my Hell Let Loose first impressions video. Remember that this is an alpha, this is alpha 1, the very first public iteration that they've released, and things are subject to change, be added, removed, as their development cycle continues. Now I've put about 15 hours into the game, maybe about 20. I've played all the different classes, played all over the map, and this is just going to be my first impressions broken down into 4 categories. The first being audio and visual, the second being gameplay, the third being the community, and the fourth being bugs. So we're going to start with graphics. So first of all, this game is one of the most beautiful independent game studio games I've ever played in this genre. It's, in my opinion, more beautiful than Squad and Postscriptum. There's just something about it that is just lifelike and just more vibrant, I guess you could say. And just even with all the terrain and all the buildings and the things inside the buildings and the mud, I've talked about the mud before, but these are all just little tiny parts of the game that when put together really bring the game to life. You feel the game feels very lifelike, and I don't know how to describe it without like showing you footage or having you play the game, but it's just very different from the feeling I get from Squad and Postscriptum, where both those environments seem, I don't know, rather dull or just washed out. Hell Let Loose feels very vibrant. So that's one thing. The game looks absolutely stunning. As far as performance, we're playing 50v50 in Alpha 1. So Hell Let Loose actually supports 100 players on a server in Alpha 1. And the map size is actually really large. I can't remember if it's 2x2 clicks or 4x4 clicks, but it's a really large map. So we're playing with gorgeous graphics with 100 players on a large map. And I'm pushing above 60 frames per second every single moment. I've never dipped below 60 while playing, so it's really well optimized. And I gotta say, that really surprises me. For Alpha 1 to be able to use 100 players and to have a map of this size with the graphics that we're running, and to be able to push 60 frames consistently is nothing short of a miracle. Like, it's stunning that how beautiful the game is and how smooth it runs. As far as sound, now this is where Hell Let Loose kind of falls behind a little bit. And I do understand that a lot of these things are missing, or they're placeholders, or they're temporary, right? A lot of the sounds in Hell Let Loose right now are just placeholders, simply because they wanted to push the alpha, right, and get us in there and playing. And sound is just one of those things where so long as you have a temporary placeholder, something that, you know, can give you cues and whatnot, it's okay, right? You can add that stuff in later. There's more important game mechanics and other things you could be focusing on. So I do understand that these are all placeholders. That being said, the quality of the sound in Hell Let Loose right now is a little low. There's a lot of tinny sounds, there's a lot of repetition, and there's a lot of just weird sound volumes and different like voice over things when you place things down. It's just, the sound right now I can tell is very placeholder. It's very prominent, very obvious that these things are going to be replaced further down the line. How far further, we don't know yet, but hopefully soon, because some of these sounds are just a little wonky and some sounds are just flat out missing. For example, for some of the weapon reload animations, there's no sound and it just looks weird as you're loading rounds into the weapon, and it's just dead silent. You don't get any like little tinks or clings or anything like that. It's just completely silent. So as they add these things, of course, it's going to flesh out the game even more, make it feel more realistic, because you'll feel like you're actually there, right? Because you're actually getting these sound cues of like the tiniest movement. But yes, sound definitely needs to be worked on. For right now, for Alpha 1, of course, just a bare bones playable iteration. It's fine, but hopefully we see these being improved and worked on relatively soon. The next thing that I want to talk about, the next category, is gameplay. And we're going to break this down into a couple things or a couple notes that I have that really make this game unique. So there've been a lot of shooters coming up recently with this style of genre, a kind of open battlefield, teamwork oriented, realistic battlefield where you can build, you have rally points, and you have open direction over where you want to go on the map. The first really mainstream one was Battlefield, right? And then we got PR, moved to Squad, Postscriptum, and now Hell Let Loose. Right, so this is kind of a growing genre of games, and what sets Hell Let Loose apart from Squad and Postscriptum, which is the new generation, is the suppression mechanics. Hell Let Loose has the suppression mechanics of PR and Rising Storm 2, and it's just incredible. A lot of people are going to either hate it or love it. The suppression is very polarizing, right? You're either going to hate it or love it because of how extreme it is. I'm going to talk about why I think the suppression system is awesome. Number one, it incentivizes players to actually fire their weapon. In Squad and Postscriptum, a lot of the firefights are only when you actually have a kill shot. And what that ends up having is very short engagements, because the only time you hear rounds being fired are when you're killing a player. And so in Hell Let Loose, you end up with these loud, long, prolonged engagements where people are just throwing rounds to attempt to hit the other player and to even decrease their effective fire. So there's a lot of cool things that happen with these prolonged engagements. Number one is you get more maneuvering, right? Because firefights don't end with the first shot, because as soon as they return fire, you can't hit them as well. And it allows for more time in the engagement, which means more flanking, more maneuvering, more positioning, which I think is a very key factor in these new tactical games, is the positioning, the maneuvering, and the flanking. So many other shooters right now are point and click, but Hell Let Loose has the very specific suppression mechanic that PR and Rising Storm 2 have. The issue with Rising Storm 2 and its suppression mechanic, while it is one of my favorite mechanics, is that the map is very linear. So players get funneled in, and the suppression doesn't really extend firefights because you're getting pushed into a meat grinder by map design. In Hell Let Loose, you don't have that issue because the map is dynamic and open. You can go where you want to go. You can avoid meat grinders if you want to avoid them, but the suppression mechanic still exists. So those longer firefights still go on, and you still have the opportunities to push through, flank, or fall back. So there's a lot of cool things that happen with the suppression mechanic. It's very subtle, it's very overwhelming, but once you realize and appreciate what that changes to the gameplay, I think you can really start to see the changes it has on actual infantry combat. The next thing I want to talk about is game modes. So Hell Let Loose has released the first iteration that we've seen of territory control. Squad and Postscriptum both have talked about adding this game mode to their games, but we have not actually seen it utilized properly yet. Hell Let Loose is the first game to properly release a territory control game mode. And there's once again, some pros and some cons. Some good things about the territory game mode is that it's completely dynamic. Every single game that you play, you can go where you want to go, when you want to go, at any point in the game. And so what that allows you to do is every game, you're going to different places. You're playing the entire map, from the entire northwest to the entire southeast side of the map. You can go off the start of the game to in any direction, and you will hit contact because of the map design and game design. So in games like Squad and Postscriptum, where you're pretty much focusing on AAS or singular objectives or flags, combat usually only happens on those on those maps on the objective. So you end up having really repetitive games because the combat all happens in the same place because they're static objectives. But because in Hell Let Loose, almost every place is an objective, every place also has combat, which means you're fighting in a different place almost every time if you so choose to lead your squad in that direction. So for me, it's really fun because we're playing this one map, but I could play this one map over and over and over and over again because I'm going to different parts of the map every single time. I can choose where and when I want to engage. Whereas in Squad and Postscriptum, where that does exist to an extent, it's still relatively locked into the singular objectives and flags. So that's a really cool part of territory control that Hell Let Loose has. The next thing I want to talk about is one of the things that it takes away, one of the, negatives of territory control. So because everywhere is a potential engagement or a potential firefight zone, you really take away the important areas of compounds or buildings or points of interest, cities, like the actual cities on the map aside from the hedgerows. Because the cap zones are so large, you could take a zone without even stepping foot in these compounds. Now, this might be because the community is rather young. We haven't learned to, defend the buildings, or which buildings are the best to defend in, and where to hold the caps, and what kind of compounds are the best to hold the caps in. And I think I'm already seeing this kind of as the game develops and as the player base learns and grows, that we'll see more contacts around the actual compounds, because players will say, hey, this is a great place to drop a garrison. This is a great place to spawn from or put assets in. And then naturally they'll become more appealing to attack and defend. But right now, as it currently stands with the young and new kind of player base, people are just having random firefights all over the area. And while that's good, that also takes away from some of the cool map design that they've done with the buildings, right? You don't really see too much CQB combat in Hell Let Loose, or at least not within buildings. One, because there aren't many buildings on this map anyways, but two, mostly because, once again, we go back to those huge cap zones. In Squad and Postscriptum, the cap zones are mainly within these compounds and cities, so you're always clearing doors, you're always breaching, and you're always going through these rooms and clearing them. But in Postscriptum, because the maps are so big, and because the cap zones are so big, you end up taking the cap zone without having to go into buildings. And while that's cool and awesome, I would like a little bit more of an incentive to focus on these points of interest, like these emplacements around the map. There are some cool trenches that you can fight, like at the Battery or at St Du Mont, or all around the map. There's these cool sandbags and cool defensive locations that rarely get used, because players can avoid them and cap the point without taking that area. So as we see more assets being added, whether it be artillery, more spawn areas, vehicles, and so on and so forth, that will make these areas just normally and generically more important, then we'll start seeing more focus, I believe, on these areas. But as of right now, with the new player base and no real incentive to go for these towns and things like that, you rarely see squads try to take the buildings, because there's no reason to. You can cap from outside the buildings. So once again, the pros and cons, right? You have combat all over the map, but because there's combat all over the map, you do avoid some really cool places to have engagements in. The next thing I want to talk about is the infantry combat. The spawn system, the build system, and all that stuff, it's very akin to things that we've seen before, right? In Squad, PR, and Postscriptum, you have your mobile spawns and your static spawns, right? You have the OPs, or rally points, right? And then you have the garrisons, which are like FOBs, so team-wide and squad-wide spawns. And this is a very generic system, works really well. Of course, it's very bare bones right now. I can't wait to see what kind of emplacements they add, because I love building bases. So hopefully we see some emplacements within the alpha, but if not, I won't be too upset. Some other things about infantry combat are, you see a lot of ammo. You see a lot of ammo among all the classes. A lot of the classes have tons of magazines or tons of clips, right? You can have so many rounds, and the fact that the rifleman can drop down an ammo box just means that you have so much more ammo than even before. And tied with the suppression effect, this means that you've got rounds going everywhere in a firefight, and it leads to these really draining, like just emotionally draining and traumatizing firefights, because you're getting suppressed, you're just trying to suppress the enemy, and you're just slugging rounds back and forth. So it's a very active gameplay, right? Because you're either throwing down rounds, you're trying to maneuver, or you're getting down. In a lot of other games like Squad and PR, and or it's not PR, but Squad and Postscriptum, you could spend a couple times in a firefight just standing and looking for a target, because you don't want to shoot. There's no advantage to shooting without seeing your target. Whereas within Hell Let Loose, there's an actual definitive and objective advantage to unloading your weapon towards the enemy, even if you don't see them, because it actively decreases their effective fire. And with all these rounds that you get, both within your own kit as well as the rifleman dropping more ammo, you just have these huge, loud firefights that lead to some epic moments. So that's all I really want to say about gameplay, and how gameplay in Hell Let Loose is set differently from Postscriptum and Squad. The next thing I want to talk about is community. Once again, with these new genre of games, these actually true multiplayer games, right? You actually need to communicate. You need to work as a team. You need to teach new people. The community is what make these games, like PR, Squad, Hell Let Loose, Postscriptum. The community is the core of these games, more so than any other game, simply because the community needs to talk to each other. In a lot of other multiplayer games, Battlefield, COD, all these other ones, those are what I call single player multiplayer games, where you are a singular person in the multiplayer scheme of things, but you don't have to interact with anybody. You can do your own thing, you can lone wolf, you can go off into a corner and do your own thing. Whereas in squad, PR, postscriptum, Hell Let Loose, you need to work with your squad. You need to work with the other squad leaders. You need to have a general knowledge as a community of how to work together, how to teach other people, and how to keep the experience positive for everyone. Because a good community will make or break this game. If we have a bad community that's toxic or won't help each other, or just completely does not know what they're doing, it's going to be bad for the game, and that's going to be out of the control of the game developers. So as you're playing Hell Let Loose, whether you're a new or veteran player, just try to teach other people. If you have questions, ask. Don't be rude. Like, honestly, the community is the core of these games because you have to talk to other people. These are games that require you to have a microphone. You cannot play these games without proper communication. So if you're new, make sure you get that help. You get taught on how to use a certain class. You ask the right questions. If you're experienced and a veteran player, don't just, go all toxic on the new players. Teach them. Show them how to play the game properly, because if you just don't teach them, it's going to be worse for everybody. If you don't teach squad leaders how to do their jobs, or you don't teach the support class how to drop the supplies, to drop the garrison, everyone has a bad time, right? Not just you, not just that one player. It's a teamwork game. These are real teamwork-oriented games that actually need communication. And that's why I think these games are so appealing right now, is because these games actually require coordination and team effort to get things done, rather than the old kind of like single-player, multiplayer games that we've been so used to that, claim that they need teamwork, where in reality, you just need to learn how to shoot well. But I like to see how the suppression and the ammo and all these factors, the communication, they really do put an emphasis on teamwork, communication, maneuvering, positioning, and decision-making. These are things that are really unique to this genre and what make this genre so awesome. So just as a community, keep that in mind as you play, keep that in mind as you learn and teach others, and yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about is the only thing that upset me in the alpha. The only thing that ever gave me any frustration or any hardship or any just concern were the bugs. And this is awesome because bugs eventually get hotfixed out. I was not upset at all with the game design direction, with the game mechanics. I enjoyed everything about the game except for the bugs, which is good news because, of course, most bugs, if not all bugs, do get phased out with hotfixes. So a couple of the bugs, like, placing a rally down and having it get eaten up by the map, or other things like getting stuck in the prone animation, or crashing to desktop. All these bugs will eventually get fixed, and these were the worst part of my experience, and to have that as my worst part of experience, I think is a pretty good sign. It's a sign that the game is going in the right direction, at least in my opinion and for my playstyle. I really do think that the position that Hell Let Loose is in and the direction it's going in will be very enjoyable and very unique, most of all. But yeah, these are my first impressions. I hope you guys, found this video entertaining and informative. Once again, this is coming from my perspective. I want a very immersive and battle experience-oriented game with teamwork and coordination. I'm not really looking for a twitchy shooter or anything like that. So just so you know where I'm coming from and where I'd like the game to go, I'm looking for that battle experience, teamwork-oriented experience, right? That really immersive experience. But yeah, so once again, just to top it all off, we'll go down my categories once again real fast. So graphics, runs well, looks good. Sound, a little lackluster right now, needs to get kind of fixed up. I understand they're placeholders, it's alpha, right? They're going to be changing, adding, and removing things as we go on. So sound just needs to get picked up a little bit. Gameplay, I love the gameplay modes. I love the territory control. You got combat all over the map. You have all kinds of different areas to fight in, and you actually get combat in them as opposed to fighting on a singular flag or a singular objective. And then suppression. I love the suppression effect. It's polarizing, right? Players are either going to hate it or they're going to love it. It's intense, it's scary, it's crazy, but it encourages you to do more, encourages you to outflank, encourages you to actually fire back. It actually promotes more different kinds of game modes than restricting it, which is, I think, a lot of people's mindset is like, oh, I can't shoot back, I can't do anything. No, you can actually do more with the suppression. You can actually suppress them and maneuver now. You can actually decrease their fire now. It's not just kill them or don't kill them. You have so many more options now. So while it may look a little overwhelming and a little bit ugly and a little bit, crazy, it actually does wonders for game design mechanics and gameplay. So just fool around with it, go into it with an open mind, but the suppression, I have to say, is one of the things that make Hell Let Loose so unique and so much fun to play as an infantryman. Bugs and community, so remember that the community is that thing that's going to hold this game together. It's going to keep it alive because you do have to interact with other humans. You can't just play this game solo player. It's just not that kind of game. You have to interact with others. You have to know what you're doing. And then finally, bugs, bugs were the worst part. That's the only thing I really have to complain about. I love the design. I love the direction. I love its current position. I love what they're trying to do. It's a gorgeous, beautiful game that runs well. The infantry combat is outstanding and unique, and the bugs are just the worst of it. As they phase out the bugs and add more content, Hell Let Loose is only going to get better and better and better. So let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this video, what you think of Hell Let Loose now, and if you plan on getting it. I'm going to do another video talking about Postscriptum and Hell Let Loose and the differences, the pros and cons of either. A lot of you are asking me, hey, what's better, Hell Let Loose or Postscriptum? And right now, all I can really say to you is that one is further along in the design cycle, right? That's Postscriptum, and one is newer and fresher, which is Hell Let Loose. Seeing how much further we go, we're going to have to wait until more assets are added to either game and actually take a look at them when they're more fleshed out. But to compare them right now, I don't think would be fair because one is, just entering alpha, and the other has been using the OWI core, which is awesome, and they've got all these assets because of it, and they're able to focus on so many features. But we still have a whole bunch to talk about as far as Postscriptum, Hell Let Loose, which one would be better for you, because I don't think there is going to be a definitive or objective better game. So thanks so much for watching, guys. I really do hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.